turn your Bibles with me over to the book that we call 3 John. 3 John. We've been in this book now for a couple of weeks. This is our second week, talking about a guy named Gaius. And Gaius was a source of encouragement to everybody who knew him. By the way, Gaius is a very common name. It'd be like somebody being called John here. So it's hard to say that we know whether this Gaius is mentioned someplace else in the Bible or not. There are 3 different Gaiuses mentioned in the New Testament, aside from this one. We don't know that he was any of those people that we run across in the book of Acts or at the end of Paul's letters. We don't know. All we know about Gaius is John was very encouraged by his action and his willingness to open up his heart and his home. And we looked at how he called him a friend, a dear friend, several times last week. And this week we're going to start in verse 5. Dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such men, so that we may work together for the truth. Okay. The truth. The truth that John has been talking about now in the 3rd book that we've looked at. The truth about God becoming flesh. About Jesus actually having a body. These are the people that are going out with this message. Because there are some people teaching that Jesus did not, in fact, have a body. He only looked like he had a body. Or he had a body sometimes. He could take it and leave. And John said that destroys everything there is to believe about Jesus. And every foundation there is to love each other. So John is busy in this area that we call Asia Minor. He's written letters. The 3rd one that we've read, right? And there are people going out to visit the churches. And that is the situation that we have in this letter. Gaius has opened his home to some of these people that came from John preaching about Jesus. And he says, showed them hospitality. And John said, oh man, that is so encouraging. Matter of fact, these people who stayed in your home, they've actually spoke to the congregation, those assembled believers. That's what a congregation is, right? Right? And when we were baptized into Christ, we were baptized into the body. There's only one body. One body. That body churches. It congregates. It gathers. It assembles for the sake of encouraging each other and keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. John says, okay, now where I am, these guys have come back and they've told us about how you opened up your home and how encouraging you were. And he said it encouraged everybody here. Now, these are the people that John says later in the text that these are the friends that send you greetings. And greet the friends there by name. And we talked about that last week, those special relationships. What we're going to talk about this week's hospitality. We introduced this idea back in 2 John on kind of a negative note when he said, don't open your home to people who do not preach that Jesus had a body, that he was physical. Okay? And I told you some backgrounds about things going on in the 1st century, because it's not. It's like we talked about in the children's moment. It was a different world. Because they didn't have Motel 6. And they didn't have Days Inn. They didn't have any of the nice places that you've ever stayed. When you traveled from town to town, you either knew somebody and stayed with them, or you took your life in your hands and you stayed in an inn. And they were notoriously dirty, dangerous places. Because that's where you would be assaulted and attacked, because you were a traveler. And if you were traveling, what they wanted was your credit card, right? No, you didn't have a credit card. You didn't have a checkbook. You had to carry whatever it was going to take to get you from one point to the other. And whatever you wanted to live with when you got there. You were carrying your valuables. It was a dangerous world. A very dangerous world. Now, in the Greek world, this idea of hospitality was almost a sacred thing. They had this culture where their god, Zeus, was the god of hospitality. And they were supposed to offer hospitality to each other. The reason I bring that up is because he got that weird thing in there. He said they didn't take anything from the pagans. We're not sure exactly what he meant by that. We're not sure if he's referring to the people who were believers who are now preaching that Jesus doesn't have a body, or if he's talking about living off hospitality of people who are not believers, pagans. But it's in there. He said, it was great, you opened your home. And these people didn't have to live in danger in any other situation. Hospitality. It was a very, very important thing. Now, our world has changed, hasn't it? Not only in this century, but in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years. Do you remember missionaries coming to town? You remember that? You remember where they stayed? With people. Somebody put up the missionary, right? You had them in your home. Or if you had somebody who came in, and I know people that did this, who wouldn't preach weekend meetings. They would come in and they'd do Friday night, Saturday, Sunday services for your congregation. And you know where they used to stay? In people's homes. You know where they stay now? Motel 6. Keep the light on for them. No, Dr. G knows what I'm talking about. I mean, and these things have changed. And there's reasons. I had a good friend. He was the head of the Bible department in the undergraduate college I graduated from, who did that. He went out and preached. And he got to the point he just would not stay with people. He would stay in hotels because they played a game, he said, called Stuffing the Preacher. And he said he gained so much weight that he just couldn't do it. And it was a fun game, stuffing a preacher. And it was fun to be part of that, I'm sure, until you got on a scale afterwards and went, wow. But you felt bad if you didn't eat this huge amount of food they put in front of you because, that they did it for you. And you, yeah, and I mean, you hear stories that maybe your parents, grandparents, talking about having a preacher over for lunch, right, on Sundays, and feeding them fried chicken, or something else you thought was just some kind of delicacy, and you would stuff the preacher. And it's amazing how many of us struggle with that, the weight stuff. Okay, but so preachers want to come down, they don't stay at houses anymore. I mean, our culture has kind of changed. It has. Hospitality kind of things have changed somewhat. When I first got here, we had a visiting missionary come on Wednesday night. Remember that? Okay. He came to Riverside, and Rick called me from over there and said, he's here, and he'd like to speak to the congregation. I said, well, bring him over. So we had him for one of our Wednesday night suppers. You remember that? And he got a chance to do his presentation, and some of you probably still sending money to help them out. That kind of thing is a beautiful, beautiful thing that knits us together with other Christians and other projects and things going on. That's hospitality. I have a couple stories from my own experience. When I was young, I had 2 older brothers, so there were 3 teenage boys in this house. Okay. And my mother was going to visit her mother who was actually dying in Lawrence, Kansas. And that left, and she took my sister. So it was just the 3 of us boys and my dad. And of course, you know how much dads knew at that point about making dinner. This is, late 60s, early 70s. And a whole different world. And so, people in the congregation invited us over to eat that week. Every night we had some place, and we went to the Michaels, we went to Lycan's house. We went, and I can remember the houses we went to, right? And then you've got this thing, what do you feed your family plus 3 teenage boys and a grown man? We had spaghetti 5 nights in a row. 5 nights in a row. And of course, before Mom left, she put some stuff in the refrigerator for us, the freezer, and you know what that was? The spaghetti. It was a cheap way to feed that many. And my dad, the thought that went into having us over and the sacrifice of that. But he got to the point that 3rd, 4th, 5th night, they'd bring out the spaghetti, he'd just look at us. Like, don't say a word. I didn't know there were so many kinds of spaghetti. And there's watery spaghetti, non-watery spaghetti. There's some with a lot of garlic. But anyway, hospitality. People opening their homes and their lives made a huge impression on me. Let me tell you one more story. When I was in Nigeria as a missionary, we were teaching in Plateau State, Nigeria, which is in the middle. And my first wife's father came to do some work at Nigerian Christian Hospital, which is in the south of Nigeria. And we were going to go visit while he was down there, doing some work for them, just to see him. Right? Now, this is a kid, I say a kid, because, you know, I was 24 at the time. I could read a map. My dad taught me how to read a map. But I was used to driving across the plains, Kansas and Colorado, right? And that was a 600-mile trip, no problem during the day. Well, I looked at this trip that was a little over, well, it was less than 400 miles. I thought, well, we could do that. We could do that in a day. So we got in a little Toyota van that we bought. And I followed the map, and I don't know how much you like maps, but I love maps too, you know. It's a shiny, nice one. But just because it had a line across a river in Nigeria doesn't mean that there's actually a bridge there. And when I got there, there was no bridge. Someday, now, there might be a bridge now, but then it was just a line someone drew across the Niger River, right? So it took me another 100 miles to get down to another bridge. Well, to say, at least, we were way out of the time schedule. And we were in country that I didn't even know. And they teach you some things in Nigeria. Scary things. Like, if you accidentally hit somebody on a road, you don't stop. You don't even stop to see if they're okay. You drive to the next town and stop at the police station and go back. Because if you've hurt this person, or if you've killed this person, their concept of justice is retribution on the spot. Okay? That's scary. Scary thought, right? Well, I'm driving down this road, it's dark, not a light around, and lo and behold, there's a tree across the road. No storms, no reason that tree should be across the road except for to stop cars. So, I grew up in Colorado, and I did some jeeping when I was young. And I got around that tree without stopping. But I say at least I was pretty shaken up by the time, and I had no idea where we were. I had no idea where the next town was, and it was dark, and I was tired. And I finally saw some lights up ahead, and I said, I don't know what that is, but we're going to stop. So I pulled up into what turned out to be a Catholic mission. And by then it's late. You know, when after dark, anything's late when you don't have a lot of lights, right? So I knock on the door and wake some people up, and the priest comes out, and he speaks English excellently. He says, yeah, sure, you can spend the night here. And he wakes up his staff. He had a house staff, okay? And they made a meal for us. And he sat and talked, and he was very interested to talk to us, because it turns out he was being transferred to the United States by the Catholic Church. And he was fascinated by me, because I was a preacher, and I didn't look like the preachers he'd seen on TV. And he was asking what life was like in the United States. And I was telling him, well, there's some differences. You know, over there, things are cheap. people are expensive, as opposed to Nigeria where things were expensive and people were cheap. I mean, that's why you had this whole staff that you could wake up and feed us all. Fascinating night. Huge, huge thing in opening up the place for us to let us stay. Slept in a room, no mosquito netting, which is not a good thing. But I got some sleep, and I was safe for the night. I got down to the Nigerian hospital after that. And then they did some tests on me and gave me a horse shot. You know, because my malaria count was really high. You know, that kind of shot where they tell you to bend over? Yeah. I slept for 3 days. I have pictures in there somewhere. When we cover up the bread, and I love it we do that, I never knew what that was about until I was in Nigeria, until I preached there in these little back places that's to keep the insects out. That's what that's about. And that goes back to churches when there were no screens and no air conditioning. Okay, and so we just kind of keep it as kind of a symbol type thing. But there used to be a very practical reason for that. And I saw that in Nigeria. I digress. Hospitality. Opening up your home. In a very real way is opening up your life to somebody. And it's huge. And the world has changed now and hospitality doesn't necessarily look the same. But I've experienced it here. I mean, last summer I was in some of your homes. You guys were letting me stay there. Some of you opened up your homes to my children. Some of you had me, I don't know how many homes I've been in, you've had me over to eat. And I tried to open up my home now that I'm living by myself. I don't do that. Because of the shape it's in, mostly. That's not necessarily true. But it's meant a lot to me that you have let me into your life. That is hospitality. And some of you have a gift for it. And it comes through. And it teaches us what it means to be friends. To have those kind of relationships that John is talking about with Gaius. And he said, these people are strangers to you, Gaius, but you opened up your home to them. They were so encouraged. He said, you sent them on. They reported here. Obviously, they're going back. They're probably carrying this letter. John says, I can't wait to come and see you. Because some people just have that gift of making you feel cared about and loved. What an amazing gift it is. Keep your fingers there. And go with me over to 1 Peter chapter 4. And we're going to see what Peter has to say. He says in verse 8 of chapter 4, he says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Wow. Okay. You know how to ruin hospitality? You grumble. And you complain. And it just takes away everything that you are trying to do for Jesus. Everything you're trying to make that person feel when you offered your life and your home to him. He says, offer hospitality to one another. Just don't gripe. Don't grumble. So there's something about using your gift in a way that's generous. And in a way that's encouraging. And here's what it means. Don't grumble. Now, do you want to grumble? Yeah, sometimes you want to grumble, don't you? Right? Yeah, you come in to sit down at your dinner and you got other family there, and who's in your seat? Who took that last chicken leg? Right? I mean, it's just natural to sometimes just want to just wait a minute and grumble. He said, don't do that. Don't ruin this amazing thing you're doing by grumbling and complaining. And you can ruin anything by grumbling and complaining. You can ruin any gift you give to somebody and what you want them to feel or what you expect them to feel by just griping about it. Or complaining about how much it costs or how much it set you back. Right? If this is your gift, he said, do it without, and he's going to talk about other gifts. He says, each one should use whatever spiritual gift he has received to serve others. Faithful administrating God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, he should do it as one speaking the very words of God. If anyone serves, he should do it with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and power forever and ever. All the different gifts that we have. And in our congregation we have a lot of different gifts, and you've seen people use them. You've seen people in service. Week after week after week, they're here, they're taking care of things, and they're doing it for the glory of God. You've seen people with leadership skills, with administration skills, doing it without grumbling, giving praise and glory to God. You've seen people use their gifts, their talents, and singing and playing and doing it all to the glory of God without grumbling. Grumbling, because that would just wipe out everything that you want to have happen when you do that service, when you do that administration, when you do that speaking, when you do that teaching. Turn over to Romans chapter 12. I'm getting all over the world here. I don't normally do this to you guys. Romans chapter 12. I just want you to see that this is stuff going on not just in John's life and Peter's life. He says, this is Paul writing to the church in Rome. He says, let's start in verse 4. Just as each of us has one body with many members, these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts, according to the grace given to us. If a man's gift is prophesying, speaking the words of God, let him use it in proportion with his faith. And if it's serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it's encouraging, let him encourage. If it's contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it's leadership, let him govern or let him administer diligently. If it's showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Friends, relationships, opening up your homes, opening up your lives, using your gifts, using your talents for one another to glorify God. Do it cheerfully. And do it without grumbling. We don't know the names of the grumblers, do we? We know Gaius' name. We know that John wrote to Gaius because of the way he opened up his home and opened up his life and the way he made people feel loved. And we know that John couldn't wait to go there. Couldn't wait to see him face to face. As our culture has changed, the needs haven't changed. Sometimes it looks different. Hospitality looks different. Sometimes it means sending somebody a gift card, to go to a restaurant, because you know that they could really stand to go out and they don't have the money. Sometimes it's going out with them and paying for their meals. Sometimes it's inviting them over to eat. Sometimes it's packing a lunch and going and sitting with them. Sometimes it's just buying them a coffee. All of these things are forms of opening up your life and your home to somebody else. And we have so many people who've done that here to each other. And you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And you know what it's meant to you. And I know what it's meant to me. And I know there's so many of you using your gift of teaching. We have people that are willing and cheerfully teaching. We have people that are willing and cheerfully going to be part of the board meeting after service. Okay? Because that's a gift they have. And they're going to do it cheerfully. And give what you have. Cheerfully, because we're all members of one body. We are all friends. in Jesus. We are all learning to love the way that Jesus loved us. In that, we give thanks. In that, we give thanks for the fact that we can come together and take the Lord's Supper together, the calmness we have, and the fact that we're not all exactly the same, that we all don't make spaghetti the same way. But we have different gifts, and we use them to the glory of God.